White House is furious today over diplomatic cables that were released this weekend from the whistleblowing organization WikiLeaks. Hillary Clinton strongly condemned the leaks earlier today. Watch.
It puts people's lives in danger, threatens our national security, and undermines our efforts to work with other countries to solve shared problems.
So do the leaks compromise our national security, or are these secrets all citizens deserve to know? Here now to discuss the leaks and the fallout are Jeremy Scahill, national security editor of The Nation magazine and author of Blackwater, and Peter Beinart, senior political reporter for the Daily Beast and associate professor at the City University of New York. Okay, Peter, what do you think? Is the national security compromised, or is this just an embarrassment? What do you think?
Well, I think it is an embarrassment, and I think it does make the functioning of national security harder. I wouldn't have problems with some of these documents coming out, but I think what a responsible journalist should have done was weeded out those that really tell us something new that we need to know for the public debate, and the large number of them that are basically just embarrassing and make foreign policy harder to conduct. And that's what I think WikiLeaks didn't do.
Well, the New York Times basically did say we didn't release everything. Didn't they?
No, I mean, the New York Times says, you know, we got it from an undisclosed source, and then it turns out that that source is the Guardian newspaper. So I'm waiting for the Guardian newspaper in London to be classified as a terrorist organization for leaking the WikiLeaks cables to the New York Times.
Well, the Guardian got it from WikiLeaks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the original source. But just to respond to something that Peter said here, I mean, the fact of the matter is that there's a real shoot the messenger thing going on here, where everyone's making the issue Julian Assange. The real issue here is what was revealed in these documents, the fact that the United States is regularly militarily attacking Yemen, a country that we're not at war with, and then allowing the Yemenis to be blamed for it, that our diplomats are spying on other diplomats at the UN and elsewhere around the world. You know, there's a lot in there about getting credit card information from diplomats. It's very serious and needs to be discussed, and the Assange part of this story really is a distraction from the real issues that are brought out by these leaks.
But we knew most of that stuff already. I mean, anyone who was really paying any attention already knew, for better or for worse, that the U.S. was taking shots at people who we claimed were al-Qaeda people in Yemen, and that we spy on people at the UN. Oh, my goodness. The point is, we could already have had that public debate without some of the details that I think now actually make it harder to prosecute foreign policy. I'm not against all. I think there were some of these documents that really do advance some of the discussion, but I think the purpose of a journalist is to go through and say, look, these really help the public debate, and these are basically just the equivalent of kind of foreign policy porn. We don't need them out there.
Yeah, it is kind of pornish.
That's not the most exciting kind of porn.
I mean, but some of the things, what is the most serious allegation or the revelation, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that what's going to have the sort of biggest blowback for the U.S. is this issue of diplomats that are spying on other diplomats. But everyone knows that. I mean, I'm sure Peter knows it, too. Anyone who deals with anyone at the UN knows that that's happening. So on the one hand, I understand and sympathize with some of what Peter's saying. On the other hand, the fact is that General David Petraeus, who's now the U.S. commander in Afghanistan, sits down with the president of Yemen, and they concoct a plan to essentially lie about who's doing the bombings. That's some pretty serious stuff. From the neocon perspective, they're having a field day with this because they think it reinforces their position on Iran.
But just for a minute on Yemen, the Yemenis were bombing al-Qaeda, right?
Well, no. What was happening is that the U.S. is launching cruise missiles into Yemen. I've reported about this before, and we have teams of special operations forces on the ground there. The scandal here is that the Yemeni president actually said to General David Petraeus, we'll lie to the public and say it's our bombs when we know it's your bombs that are doing the killing.
And what would be the purpose of that?
Well, the purpose is because the U.S. isn't at war with Yemen, and it's essentially a covert war that's ongoing there. I think it's very important that we have David Petraeus.
But doesn't Yemen then become an object of terrorist attacks?
Well,
retaliation?
First of all, Yemen already has a terrorist operation going on inside their borders, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the sort of most famous of the new al-Qaeda kids on the block.
All right, what about the less serious things, you know, about like Putin and Berlusconi having a bromance? Why do we need to know that? Well, I thought he liked hookers and teenage girls. Anyway,
yeah, that's a crowd I really would not want to hang with. Yeah, there's stuff about Gaddafi's buxom Ukrainian prostitutes. I mean, I think this is, it seems to me, the kind of stuff that we really didn't know. And I don't actually want the people making American foreign policy to be spending most of the next days and weeks trying to deal with the fallout of that. It seems to me that's actually a waste of time. They have better things to do.
Okay, now Peter King, congressman from New York, he says that WikiLeaks is a terrorist organization. What do you think?
Well, first of all, Representative Peter King knows a thing or two about terrorism because he was a major supporter of the Irish Republican Army during the 1980s and has his own questions to answer. The other thing is that what the WikiLeaks documents reinforce that the Saudis continue to fund terrorism. That's a top U.S. ally.
Yeah.
You know, the U.S. deals with a lot of terrorist organizations. WikiLeaks is not a terrorist organization.
I mean, look, it's not a terrorist organization. I think that's silly. But the basic question is, to what degree do you want the U.S. to be able to continue to prosecute foreign policy? If in Yemen, for instance, to go back, it's an important
Don't go to Yemen. I can't do Yemen.
I mean, are we basically?
I want to ask you before I go. I don't have too much time left. You were in favor of the Iraq War, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now, if you knew what we know now, would you still be in it? Because WikiLeaks would have been around in those days. We might not have invaded Iraq.
No, in fact, I've said repeatedly for many, many years now that I think I was dead wrong to support the war in Iraq, whether I knew what I knew now or knew then. So,
do you think
I mean,
it would
there
have
are
helped?
obviously, in those cases, those documents would have been incredibly valuable. But knowing about Gaddafi's prostitute is not, and that's why I think journalists need to make those decisions about what are in the public interest and what aren't.
Well,
like
I don't know about that. Why can't we make those decisions?
But the New York Times did have that responsibility, and they printed lie after lie of the Bush-Cheney administration. I want Hillary Clinton to go after the torturers with as much passion as she goes after Julian Assange.
But the reality is you
WikiLeaks.
can't conduct foreign policy in complete transparency. As much as we might like it, you can't.
Okay.
And we never do.
All right, I have to go. That was very interesting. Thank you very much. We'll be back in just a minute.